A for lying about my biggest fear on a quiz show and winning a car while making other contestants lose. Alright Reddit, I need your take on this because my family is still arguing about it years later. And it's driving me up the wall. I'm starting to wonder if I'm the bad guy here, even though I'm pretty sure I'm not. So buckle up, this is a bit of a saga, but I'll try to keep it clear and not ramble too much. No promises though. For context, I, 34M, live on this tiny little island near the UK. It's one of those places where everyone knows everyone, and the biggest event of the year is like the annual sheep shearing contest or the time someone's cow got loose and wandered into the pub. Point is, it's small, it's quiet, and we don't get a lot of excitement. A few years back when I was 29, our local TV station decided to spice things up by launching this quiz show called Island Challenge. Not the real name, but close enough. It was a big deal for us. Think low-budget Fear Factor meets the Crystal Maze, but with a strong whiff of community center vibes. The whole island was buzzing about it, and I, being a bit of a competitive nut, thought, why not? Could be a laugh. The premise of the show was simple but kind of brutal. You had to compete in a series of challenges to win prizes. Some physical, some mental, some psychological. The grand prize was a car, which, let's be real, was a pretty average hatchback, nothing fancy. But on an island where half the population drives 20-year-old rust buckets, it was a big deal. The show had this whole face your fears, test your limits vibe. And it was hosted by this overly enthusiastic guy who used to be a weatherman on the local news. Picture a middle-aged dude in a shiny suit trying way too hard to channel Ryan Seacrest. I applied on a whim, mostly because my mates at the pub were egging me on, saying I'd probably trip over my own feet and make a fool of myself on live TV. I'm a math teacher at the local secondary school, so I'm used to being in front of people, but I'm not exactly Mr. Charisma. Still, I figured my knack for problem-solving and the fact that I was in decent shape back then, not a fat bastard, as I told my family later, might give me a shot. Plus, the application process was just filling out a form at the community center, so it wasn't like I had to jump through hoops. Here's where things get juicy. Part of the application was listing your 5 biggest fears. The psychological challenge involved being locked in a clear box room, filled with one of your listed fears, and you had to sift through it to find clues for the next round. Think digging through a pile of gross stuff to find a key or whatever. The producers made it clear that the fear you'd face would be chosen from your list, and you had to be honest because they'd know if you were lying. Spoiler, they didn't. I don't know if they were trying to scare us into being truthful or what, but that was the vibe. Now, I'm not an idiot. I knew right away that if I listed my actual biggest fear, I'd be screwed. My real fear is kind of obscure. Not like heights or public speaking, but something super specific that I'm not going to share here because frankly it's embarrassing and I don't need Reddit roasting me for it. Let's just say it's not something you'd typically find in a quiz show budget, but if they'd somehow managed to recreate it, I'd have frozen up like a deer in headlights. No way I'd have made it through. So, I did what any mildly strategic person would do. I lied. I listed 5 things I'm not scared of: spiders, cockroaches, snakes, scorpions, and wood lice. Growing up in the countryside, I've been dealing with creepy crawlies my whole life. Spiders in the barn. Snakes in the grass. Been there, caught one with my bare hands when I was 12. Cockroaches. Gross, but I've squashed worse in my aunt's old cottage. My thinking was simple. If I'm going to be stuck in a box with something, it might as well be something I can handle. I wasn't trying to game the system that hard. I just wanted to give myself a fighting chance. Fast forward to the show. I breezed through the physical challenges. Think obstacle courses and carrying heavy stuff across a field. I'm not exactly an Olympian, but I was fitter back then. And most of the other contestants were either out of shape or just not taking it seriously. The mental challenges were my bread and butter. Math puzzles, logic games, that kind of thing. I teach this stuff for a living, so I was in my element. I'm not saying I was cocky, but I was definitely feeling good about my chances by the time we got to the psychological round. The psychological challenge was the big eliminator. They built it up like it was some life-altering test of courage. They had this clear perspex box set up in the middle of the studio, with dramatic lighting and ominous music like we were in a horror movie. The host was hyping it up, going on about facing your deepest fears, while the audience, mostly locals who got free tickets, cheered like we were gladiators. Each contestant had to go in alone, in their underwear, to make it more intense, I guess, and find 3 hidden clues within a time limit. If you didn't find all 3, you were out. When it was my turn, they revealed my fear. A box full of cockroaches. Like thousands of them, crawling all over each other, hissing like nobody's business. I was in my boxers, barefoot, and the floor was practically moving with these things. I won't lie, it was disgusting. The feeling of them skittering over my feet was grim, and I had to dig through piles of them to find the clues, which were little plastic tokens buried in the mess. The audience was screaming, the host was yelling encouragement, and I just kept my head down and got to work. I found the first token in about 30 seconds, the second one a minute later, and the third one with about 20 seconds to spare. I walked out of that box like it was nothing, even though I was secretly gagging the whole time. Here's the thing. I was the only one who made it through. The other contestants, there were 4 of us left at that point, all crashed and burned. One guy, Dave, a local mechanic, had listed heights as his fear, and they put him in a harness and made him climb a rope ladder inside the box to get his clues. He froze halfway up and started hyperventilating. Another woman, Sarah, had listed spiders, and her box was full of tarantulas. She took one look and refused to even go in. The third guy, Tom, had snakes, and he managed to find one clue before he bolted out, swearing like a sailor. I felt bad for them, I really did. Nobody looked like they were having a good time. But I also wasn't going to throw the game just to make them feel better, you know? I went on to win the whole thing. The final round was some trivia nonsense, and I'm not saying I'm a genius, but I've got a decent memory for random facts. Thanks, pub quizzes. I walked away with the car. A silver 2018 Ford Fiesta, nothing to write home about, but it was brand new and I was chuffed. I didn't really need it though. My old car was fine, and I'd been eyeing something a bit sportier for a while. So, as soon as the paperwork cleared, there was some rule about owning it for 6 months first. I sold the Fiesta for a decent chunk of cash and bought myself a used BMW 3 Series. It's not a Ferrari, but it's a hell of a lot nicer than the Fiesta, and I'm still driving it today. Fast forward to a couple months ago. My family had a big get-together at my parents' house for my mum's 60th birthday. Picture a classic island party. Too much food, too much booze, and everyone talking over each other. I'd had a few pints, and somehow the topic of the quiz show came up. My cousin Jenny was like, "Oh yeah, you're the guy who won the car. Tell us about it." So, feeling a bit loose from the beer, I spilled the beans about how I'd lied about my fears. I thought it was a funny story, like, haha, I outsmarted the producers and walked away with a car. I told them about the cockroaches, how gross it was but how I didn't care because I wasn't actually scared, and how I sold the car to get something better. Everyone was laughing their heads off at first, especially my brother, who thought it was the most brilliant thing he'd ever heard. But then the mood shifted. My sister Emma got this look on her face like I'd just admitted to robbing a bank. She's always been the moral compass of the family, which is great, but sometimes she takes it to a whole other level. She was like, "Wait, so you cheated? That's not fair to the other contestants." I was a bit taken aback, but I laughed it off and said, "It's not cheating, it's strategy. They could have done the same thing." But Emma wasn't having it. She went on about how I'd lied to the producers and screwed over the other contestants, who were probably honest about their fears. My dad, who's never one to shy away from a debate, jumped in and said he thought it was clever, and if the other contestants were dumb enough to list their real fears, that was their problem. By the end of the night, my family was split into 2 camps. Camp 1, led by Emma and my Auntie Sue, thinks I'm a morally bankrupt jerk who basically stole the car by lying. They keep saying things like, "What if Dave or Sarah had one? They really needed that car." For the record, I don't know if they needed it or not. Dave's a mechanic, so he's probably fine, and Sarah runs a bakery, so I doubt she's destitute. Camp 2, led by my dad and my brother, thinks I'm a genius and that the other contestants got what they deserved for not thinking it through. My mum, as usual, is refusing to pick a side and just keeps saying, "Can we talk about something else?" Since then, it's become this weird running joke/argument in the family. Every time we get together, someone brings it up, and it's either "you're a legend" or "you're a cheat." I got a text from Emma last week that just said, "Still think you owe Dave an apology," which I ignored because, like, what? I'm not tracking down a guy I barely know to say sorry for winning a game show 5 years ago. But it's starting to get under my skin. I don't think I did anything wrong. It's a game, not a court of law. Nobody said you had to be 100% honest. And the producers didn't exactly check my fear credentials. But the fact that half my family thinks I'm some kind of unethical mastermind is making me second-guess myself. So, Reddit, aita for lying about my fears on the quiz show and winning the car? Was it a clever move, or did I cross a line? I'm genuinely curious what you all think, because I'm tired of arguing about it over Sunday roasts. Also, if it matters, I donated a chunk of the money from selling the car to the local animal shelter. So I'm not completely heartless. Lay it on me, what's the verdict?